get to it, hit the info button a couple times till you get this on the screen. We'll start in the top left corner. It says TV, that's our time value or shutter speed. That's the dial setting on the top of the camera. And if I were to change the dial to like AV, which is your aperture setting, you can then dial that in, aperture priority. It doesn't need to know the shutter, or you don't need to know the shutter because it compensates for it. If you were in a manual, you could adjust both, and both of them are up there. And if you're in P or program, by having neither up there, that's sort of telling you that don't worry about it, we'll figure out the combination of both. So we'll keep it in TV or time value for now. And by the way, if you wanted to adjust time value, you hit the Q button, use your four-way controller on the back to get to it. Then you want to turn your front dial here and adjust accordingly. And then you can change, in this case, your shutter speed. One thing about aperture priority or shutter priority, it's going to display here the shutter, but the aperture is not going to show up unless you hit the button halfway down, and it's going to tell you for a little bit, you know, what f-stop you're at. So as I rotate the shutter here, notice how it compensates with the f-stop. However, if I start bringing it up too high, you're going to notice that the f-stop, it goes down to 4.5, 4, 3.5, then just stops and starts blinking when you're at 3/20th of a second in this particular environment, which is inside but a lot of sunlight coming through. So you got the 3/20th of a second going on there, and again, once I hit the shutter button down, it's telling me, okay, look, if you want a nice picture, you're going to have to go down to, in this case, 1/60th of a second, which should be fine. And I'm going to hit the shutter button halfway down, and again, it starts blinking. And this is where if you had a real expensive lens that went down to 2.8, you'll be able to get more light in, because it's telling you that really to get the proper exposure, we're going to need be down at 1/25th of a second or 1/100th of a second. Now the only problem with that, if you're doing cheerleaders, it's going to blur a little if they're throwing them up in the air. So that's where a real expensive lens would come in. But I really wanted to show you this to show you that as you adjust the shutter speed, you're going to see if you hit the shutter button halfway down where the aperture is. And if the aperture is blinking, it's telling you I've gone as low as I can to take in more lens. You're either going to have to turn up the ISO or you're going to have to bring down the shutter speed for proper exposure. So moving on to the right, you have your ISO here, and we'll be going into that on the DVDs a little later. And then we're going to move to the next row here. And this is your exposure compensation. So if I'm filming a musician in a tent and everything's white in the background, the exposure may go a little darker. So you want to basically tell the camera, hey, I want it a little more than one stop up. I want you to overexpose. With auto exposure bracketing on the T3i, you would go to your information screen on the back, then you're going to hit the Q button, and you're going to scroll till you get to this exposure compensation, auto exposure bracketing. But if you're just to turn the dial on the top of the camera, it's going to give you your exposure compensation. If you want to get the bracketing where you get the 3 different pictures, you're going to have to hit the set button. Now that the button's on set, and this will not work with flash, but it will work without flash, you're going to turn that same dial, and you're going to see 3 little units here. This is a description that shows up, automatically shoots 3 shots with different exposures. Okay, so you're going to get your 3 shots, but they're going to be, in this case, 1 stop apart or 1 exposure bracket apart. So once again, you're going to be in the Q mode, and then you're going to, once you're in the Q mode, you're going to hit set, and then you're going to be able to dial in where those 3 particular shots are going to be. Are they going to be 2 stops apart, 1 stop apart, very close together? My suggestion is about 1 to 1.5 exposures apart, and that'll give you a lot of latitude and a lot of choice when you go back into your studio and computer later. And the next one shows that our exposure compensation for flash is at 0. Once again, we can use the dial on the back and the front to go plus or minus, give you a little more or a little less flash if you need it. The next one is your picture styles, and we have some that are already built in from portrait, landscape, or you could do custom picture styles, creations that you may want to create, so when you're out in the field, you can call up that setting anytime. The next one is your white balance setting. We'll be going into that on the DVD. And this is your auto lighting optimizer, which automatically adjusts the brightness and contrast. This next selection is for your flash firing. I'm going to hit the set button. You have a few choices for your regular shooting and your wireless flash
modes. If you get a wireless flash unit, then you want to reference your manual as to specifically what to do. On the first one here, if I hit the info button again, it gives me some choice of first curtain and second curtain sync. The second curtain was the flashes at the end of the exposure. The first curtain is when it flashes right in the beginning. We pretty much want first curtain, and you want the through the lens flash mode.
Moving on to our different autofocus modes. We'll be taking care of those and explaining those. I go to my drive modes. This is low speed continuous drive modes. It's one after the other, boom, 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 great for sports. And then single shooting is what you normally shoot with. Or you have your timers, a 2-second timer if you don't want to really touch the camera when things are going off, or the 10-second timer if you want to take group pictures. And so your exposure metering here, you have partial, spot, center weighted, and the evaluative is pretty much the smartest generic all-around one that you want to leave your camera on, especially to start. Pretty much takes care of everything off the bat. Going over here, we're in RAW right now. It's 133 pictures. What if you're going to need more than that? Well, you can start getting more pictures by having settings like medium that are really going to look as good at 8 megapixels, but they're going to give you more pictures. And you see you can dial it all the way up. That's with the RAW, and then you could dial it up to get rid of the RAW and have 999 pictures. Now keep in mind that it's actually more than 199 pictures. That's how much the counter goes up to there. So there is the whole information screen on the back. We've briefly gone over all the different settings here to give you a head start. In the DVDs, we're going to be going over more in detail all these specifics, but this is just great to get you started and to make you an expert in no time.